A listener production.
Hi, Natarsha Belling with you, and welcome to this special ANZAC Day edition of the Afternoon Briefing. As we pay our respects to the fallen and remember the many men and women who have served for our country and continue to fight for our freedoms, we're joined today by our former Governor-General, Sir Peter Cosgrove. As our world deals with ongoing uncertainty, Sir Peter, who was also our former Defence Chief and served in Vietnam, says this year more than ever we need to commemorate ANZAC Day and remember the horrors of war. Sir Peter Cosgrove, such an honour for you to join us today on this special episode of The Briefing. If we can start by asking you probably one of the most important questions anyone can ask, why should we commemorate ANZAC Day?
ANZAC Day sits aside from, and in my view, slightly elevated from many other days on the national calendar. It was when Australia, as a modern nation, announced that it was a world citizen, not a colony, not some poky little place a long way from the old world or the new world, but a sovereign nation that was going to stand up for people in trouble.
And when you go back and study the history, the friendship, the bravery of these Anzacs that were going into an unknown, especially during World War I and World War II, that as a world we didn't understand those events back then. Do you still to this day get incredibly inspired by the bravery and courage of both the men and women that fought on the front during World Wars I and II and continue to serve today?
I certainly do. And that's handed down an indissoluble tradition through Navy, Army and Air Force that when you put on the uniform, you must behave as our Australian people have done throughout our modern history. They've behaved in a way which makes the nation feel proud, and they've never let us down. Now, you know, when those troops went ashore at ANZAC Cove 110 years ago, all but a day or so, they were described by an eloquent journalist at the time as gladiators with the eyes of children. By that they meant that these huge, rough, fit, determined men, cheerful, with a wonderful sense of camaraderie, but no experience in war. And they did things on that first day of the landings at Gallipoli that more experienced troops would have not attempted, because our fellows said, well, this is what we're supposed to do. We go up these killing heights into the face of machine gun fire to fight a brave enemy. And we were absolutely smashed on day one. And yet over the months that we were in Gallipoli as a nation, we sadly made our nation proud of us. I say that because I'm speaking now in the place of the Anzacs, the real Anzacs, but we've inherited that, and it's guided and shaped the behaviour of Australians in uniform ever since.
A new survey has come out today, Sir Peter, showing that from News Corp that less than 1 in 4 members of Generation Z feels strongly connected to ANZAC Day, and only 1 in 6 would actually sign up to defend our country in the event that we went to war or we were attacked. Do you think that is reflective that there is a whole generation of Australians that don't identify with ANZAC Day?
I think your last remark there probably encapsulates it. Do they identify? What's their grasp of the significance? What's their understanding of it? And to me, it's not surprising in the sense that if it was a relatively small number of about 1,100 people were canvassed. But let's take it as representative. That changes very quickly. I mean, you know, a little further down in that survey, it showed that if there was an unmistakable threat of conflict, that small number becomes a huge number of the same generation who said under those circumstances, they would very seriously contemplate putting their hand up to serve. So that, to me, tells the story. So does that mean that somehow ANZAC Day loses its relevance? No, it's a touchstone of our culture. Not to glorify war, but to say we can celebrate Australians who found that under certain circumstances they'd put their lives on the line for a better world.
So, Peter, in 2025, we're seeing right now all of these very concerning international events overseas. More than ever, one may argue we need to actually commemorate ANZAC Day and understand also the horrors of war.
I think you're perfectly correct in that this understanding may make us, as a nation, do two things. Redouble our efforts as much as we can as a powerful nature, but one which is not militaristic, to foster peace, to urge peace, to work for peace. Every day, our diplomats and our people of good character work with international bodies to promote peace. But equally, with an acknowledgement that human nature doesn't change too much, we have to think of what is the first duty of a nation which prides itself on its sovereignty, on its worth, on its potential, as its home for the future generations, and that is security. We have to understand that we do careful preparation in case peace fails. Work every day for peace, but be ready for when it fails.
So your professional feeling right now, your analysis of world events, is there the real risk of conflict?
More than for generations. We entered into Pax Americana after the dreadful carnage of World War II. In the fairly recent aftermath of the war, we negotiated the ANZAC Treaty, 1952, memory serves, and that was for so many years, generations, it was a sort of a security blanket. We were able to say, well, we are so aligned with the United States, similar cultures, similar values, similar feelings of empathy with those who are being oppressed. All those sorts of emotions led us to become part of that apparatus, which it's not like NATO. It requires the two nations to consult rather than to act in concert. But the consultation part was important to us. And for many years, that was our security blanket. And it's just in more recent years when our region has become quite troubled. The risks seem higher. The prospect of ongoing peace seem to be under threat. Pax Americana has, in some ways, been shrunken to perhaps a more isolationist feeling within the administration of the day. So this shows us that we have to take a more careful and well-prepared sense of self-reliance. Not wholly. We'll always have allies, and the United States is a great friend, and we want to retain them as a great ally. But under the circumstances of modern days, we are now a little bit like we might have felt back in 1938, 39, when the troubled old world showed us that the war to end all wars was not quite accurate. World War II came about. So in that regard, what's prudent? What should Australia do if it feels like it has to take more responsibility for its own deterrent defence? And that's really the sort of mode we're in now. And the reason for haste is to do with the fact that these days modern military capabilities are lightning fast. And we're a vulnerable country. 95% of our trade in and out of Australia passes in ships. And those ships underscore the fact that we're a maritime nation. We love our Army and our Air Force and our Navy, but we are a maritime country, and our continued viability as a rich and significant nation lies in the fact that we can continue to trade the way we have done for the last almost a century.
So, Peter, pretty confronting question. Do you think our security alliance with the US is over?
Absolutely not. I think that it's under perhaps a sea change or a watershed moment. I think it's up to us to show that we are a friend of the United States that is more of a lifter than a leaner. Now, the way we do that is to be very, very self-serving, is to ensure that we are more able to defend and deter people from interfering with our sovereignty and our sovereign interests.
And that means in regards to what's going on in the world right now, we should be increasing our defence capability with budgets?
Well, I think with the announcement of AUKUS several years ago and with the subsequent action by governments, they've shown that AUKUS is the key because it says modernise. I mean, you could break it down into all forms of individual capabilities, but it is essentially to say modernise to try to catch up with the pace of modern military technology as it exists in abundance in our region. So this is in no way ever to be construed as a threat to any other nation, except to say we are the 13th largest economy in the world. We are a giant geography. We have people scattered all over the wide brown land going about their business. We have all these aspirations and regard for our own sovereignty. What are we doing to modernise our protections therein? So the government needs to do what it's doing. The alternative government has seized on this as well. And as an old soldier, I give 3 hearty cheers every time somebody says we will now promise to do more in the defence arena. And I say this as a former Governor General as well. I deeply appreciate the huge competition for the dollar out of our wealth, that all of the necessary support to the community comes. Defence is only one. Education, health, social services of many descriptions. There's no end to it. And I'm not saying that defence should totally wipe those out. We somehow have to do all of those things, all of them.
So, Peter, for you, your grandfather fought in the war, in World War II, I believe. Your father also...
World War One as well.
World War One as well.
World War One. Yep.
And also then fought in World War II, and also your father fought in World War II. You have served for our country. What lessons in 2025 can we learn, considering what is happening right now in the world, about the horrors of war?
Well, there's not one person in Australia who would be unaware of the carnage that modern warfare can bring about on armed combatants and also the innocent. There's no question that we, as a nation, it would only be toddlers who would be unaware of what military violence can do to any person, any living person. So that's the sort of arena into which our young men and women in Navy, Army or Air Force uniforms will have to perform if they are called into action. And we must make sure that as a rich nation, we can give them the very best chance to, first of all, deter violence, but if violence becomes necessary, to come back to their parents, their loved ones, hearty and whole.
So, Peter, on the eve of ANZAC Day, as we commemorate the many, many wonderful Australians that fought on the war front, but also literally kept everything running back on the home front when their loved ones were fighting, and all the wonderful Australians that continue to fight for us today, what would your message be to Australians?
Australia, this year is 110 years since our troops went ashore in Gallipoli and started the legend of ordinary Australians who did extraordinary things in service of their nation. When their nation said, we must help, they went. They were gladiators with the eyes of children, but they have inspired generations of Australians, both those in uniforms and those who have sons and daughters who have gone to war or might do so in the future.
So, Peter Cosgrove, thank you so much, lest we forget.
Lest we forget, and thank you very much indeed, Natasha.
That was Sir Peter Cosgrove. And that's it for this episode of the afternoon edition of The Briefing. We're back tomorrow with the weekend briefing, and on tomorrow's episode, Antoinette is joined by former Australian of the Year, Grace Tame.
Your T-shirt today, allegedly, it's a black T-shirt, allegedly, and in inverted commas. What's that about?
I think it's just a tongue-in-cheek reference to in the work that I do, and I know that you've got experience around this.
Yeah.
And we're having to pussyfoot around the truth.
Yep.
And the law.
Yep.
The law is a blunt instrument that can be weaponized. Justice is not necessarily synonymous with truth. So you can always save yourself with an allegedly.
You can also follow us on our socials, on Instagram at The Briefing Podcast, and also on TikTok and YouTube. You just need to search Listener Newsroom, that's spelled LISTNR. And we'll be back in your feed Monday morning from 6 a.m. I'm Natasha Belling. Thanks for your company. See you next time.